And by the way, it wasn't Ivan Meisner that said you can push a wet noodle. It was actually George Washington in one of his letters to the Continental Congress. Ivan Meisner may have stolen it from George Washington. Let me ask you a question. On Friday night, I was out having a cocktail and was talking to a woman, and she asked me what was B&I. Now, in 2 words, what do you think I should have said to her, which would have explained to her exactly what B&I was? Giver's gain.
Marketing plan.
Marketing plan. Come see for yourself. That would be, come see for yourself. That would be 5 words. I only had 2. Come see. Okay?
More money.
More money. Marketing plan.
Business organization.
Business organization.
Hard contact.
Hard contact.
Networking.
Networking. Training. More referrals. In reality, Bruce and David both hit exactly on what it is. It's a marketing plan. This is a marketing plan. It's not giver's gain, because she doesn't know what that means. It's not a business organization, because she doesn't know what that means. It's not anything else you said here, because they don't know what that means. But when you say B&I is nothing more than a marketing plan, they start to understand. Now let me tell you a story. I have an older house that I was renovating about 10 years ago. And I decided that I wanted a gas insert fireplace in my house. And so, as I'm wont to do, I spent a lot of time trying to find the absolute best deal, beating somebody up in order to get like the lowest absolute price. And I got a gas insert fireplace from a company that was going out of business, and he was closing his showroom. And so not only did I get a great deal installed, I got the display model, I got a phenomenal deal. And I'm going to tell you this, it worked great. For about 3 years, it worked great. Then what happened was, my in-laws were coming up. My wife says, oh, we got to have the fireplace. Went to turn it on, because, you know, that's the cool thing about gas fireplaces. You just flip a switch. And guess what happened? Nothing. It didn't go on. So, as I'm wont to do, I kind of like dug around, played around, tried to figure out what was wrong with it. But the bottom line is, it wasn't firing up. So I turned to the YellowPages. Now, this is before I actually worked for the YellowPages, but I turned to the YellowPages to under fireplace repair, blah, 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 whatever it was. And I started looking at ads, and I'm going to tell you, there was a huge ad in the book. There were another 13 ads in the book. Now, if you know how consumers use the YellowPage book, you'll discover that consumers will always go to the largest ad first. They will always go to the largest ad. Doesn't matter how you lay out the page, they will always look at the largest ad. The next ad that they will look at will be the ad that has color in it. Then they will start reading the ads. So if you have the largest ad and you have the largest ad with color in it, guess what? You have an opportunity to pretty much take all of the business from everybody else in the book. That's why if you've ever dealt with a YellowPage salesperson, we're always saying, got to have a bigger ad, right? Now, I looked at the biggest ad. And it was missing something in there. I don't know what it was missing, but I started looking at the next ad. And I looked at the next ad, and I looked at the next ad. And the guy who actually got my business had the smallest ad in the YellowPages. He had absolutely no color in the YellowPages. All his ad said that I read was, we service all makes and models. Now, I figured I got this great deal. The company that I bought that fireplace from is out of business. I don't know what kind of model I have. I don't know what kind of make I have. But I assume that if his ad says, we service all makes and models, my assumption was, guess what? He could fix my fireplace. And so I called him. And of course, it was a Saturday, so I paid a little bit more for the service call. He came out, and for $70, he told me, well, you know, Mr. King, if you really want this fireplace to work, you actually have to turn the pilot light on. So I paid $70 for him to turn the pilot light on for me, and then I flipped the switch, and what do you suppose happened? It went on. So then I went to work for the YellowPages. And I started talking to my customers, and that story was very much part of the conversation I would have with my clients about the value of the YellowPages, because the value was, the reason he got that business was because his marketing plan said, I'm going to say what everybody else isn't saying. I'm going to tell everyone that I service all makes and models. See, all the other advertisers, they talked about heat glow and countryside and all these things that meant absolutely nothing to me. But I service all makes and models, that meant something to me. And he got $70. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, could that guy who had the biggest ad, who spent all that money on a big ad with lots of color, could he have fixed my fireplace? My guess is, yeah. I mean, any idiot who could have looked at it could have fixed my fireplace. However, all right, could the smallest ad guy have fixed my fireplace? And the answer is absolutely. But he had to tell me that he could fix it. And the big guy didn't. Not too long after that, about 2.5 years after that, I went to work for the Yellow Pages. And I was very, very, very successful with the Yellow Pages. And I came across a guy who repaired appliances. So if your refrigerator breaks down, you pick up the phone and you call him, and he comes out and he fixes your refrigerator. And if your fireplace or your iron or your toaster or any other appliance that you happen to have breaks down, you pick up the phone and you call him. So I went out and I talked to him, and the first thing he said to me was, the Yellow Pages don't work. I've been in the Yellow Pages for a while. They don't work. All I get are nuisance calls. All I get are people that call me that they're just shopping for price. Well, my guess is, if my refrigerator doesn't work, my guess is I'm not really concerned about the price as I am about the fact that I have $400 worth of food in the freezer that needs to be repaired. I'm not overly concerned about, is it going to be $69 or is it going to be $79? I just want someone to come out and fix it. And so I talked to him, and I told him the story about the fireplace. And you know what he said to me? Fine. I'll keep my ad in. But you know what? If they want it fixed, they got to come to me. I don't want my phone number in the ad. I don't want my phone number in the ad. That's what he said to me. So I said, well, let me explain something. Okay, this is the Yellow Pages. It's part of the phone book. Might want to rethink it. He said, nope, absolutely not. I'm not putting my phone number in the ad. Okay, so customer's always right? Except when they're idiots, but you can't really call a customer an idiot if you are on a commission, right? So I said, listen, I think you're making a huge mistake. And I talked to him, and I talked to him, and I talked to him, and he was blue in the face, and he kept saying, listen, we're either going to do it my way, or I'm just not going to go in the book. Okay. So I said, I need you to sign off that you aren't having a phone number in the book, because I'm not going to have him turn around and yell at me. So he wrote right on there, I do not want my phone number in the ad. I only want the address. And he put the address in pretty big letters. He did. You could see it from a mile away, even though he had a little ad. You could see it from a mile away, his address. I don't know how he did the following year, even though I had his account. The following year, when I called to renew his ad, I got that famous dee-dee-dee. The number you have dialed is no longer in business. By the way, when I drove by his business, guess what I saw? A big bacon sign. Okay? And the point is, all right, that you have purchased a marketing plan. It's pretty set. We're going to tell you, you need to put your ad or your phone number in your ad. You need to talk to people about this being your marketing plan. You have to do the things that your Yellow Page sales rep is telling you to do. That means you've got to hold people accountable. I just listened to a conversation for the last 15 minutes about the challenges that each chapter is having. And you know what they were? Every one of them said, growth, more visitors. Every one of them said that. And yet, at the same time, the concern is that you don't want to hold people accountable. But this is your marketing plan. If your phone number isn't in the book, how effective do you think your marketing plan is going to be? So what I want you to understand is that you have a plan in front of you. It's pretty laid out. If you read Ivan's books, they're pretty laid out. Structure, commitment, education. That's it. Structure, commitment, education. We talk about structure, that means we got to run our meetings right. Well, that's an easy thing to do. You just follow the agenda. Just follow point A, point B, point C, blah, 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 and don't deviate it from it. The reason for that is because we've learned over 20 years that we have a marketing plan, and the best way to make sure that plan works is to make sure your phone number's in the ad. That's it. The best way to make sure your plan works is to tell your customers you service all makes and models. That's your marketing plan. All right? So structure is real important. Education is just part of it. See, I would never have known that the Yellow Pages are successful, and I would never have known that the average consumer, when they open up the Yellow Pages, looks at the largest ad first. I would never have known that they'll look at a color ad second. And I can tell you the statistics, but it's been a few years. I can tell you the statistics of specifically how many people look at each ad. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't spent a whole lot of time learning about the Yellow Pages and how they worked. So you have to learn how to work your marketing plan. That means you got to go to the educational programs. If you're not going to those educational programs, is it any wonder that the rest of your marketing team isn't doing what they need to be doing? Because they don't know either. But they're seeing you as leaders, and they're saying, well, my president isn't going to these classes. Why should I? My president isn't learning. Why should I? I'll do exactly what my leadership team is doing. They seem to be doing just fine, and yet, in reality, they're not. And we know that because if you look at these stats that we pass out every month, if you look at these, what do you see? You see 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. All right? That's what we see. So we know that you're not being as successful as you can because your Yellow Page rep was saying, hey, by the way, you need to tell everybody that you service all makes and models. You need to tell everybody what your phone number is. You've got to be part of those educational programs. You've got to learn how to take advantage of this. It doesn't come naturally. It's not just written out there on my forehead. You've got to learn it. It's up to you because you're here to make that plan work. All right? And then there's the commitment part. Structure, commitment, education. See, the commitment part tends to be the hardest. And it's not that you're not committed. Is that you're not holding your other marketing members to be just as committed as you are. One of the things that David Gross said the problems he had was that they had to get rid of the dead weight in the chapter. That's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to turn to your best friend or the person who's handing you 5 referrals a month. It's not easy to turn to them and say, hey, by the way, you're not helping the rest of the team. But the commitment says that you've got to. The commitment says that just because I'm getting 5 referrals from Mary every month doesn't mean that Dr. Carl is. Doesn't mean that Harry Forrest is. Doesn't mean that Bob Kell is getting those referrals. And they have every right to expect that they're going to get the 5 referrals that she's giving away every month too. And so you have to turn to your teammate and say, look it, you know what? You're a great guy. You're a great person. I like you. I'm going to continue to do business with you, but you're not helping the team. You've got to make sure that you can hold those people accountable. Because if you don't, guess what? All the work that you're doing right now, all the money that you are spending right now on this marketing plan, all that money is wasted. And you know why? Because Lori's going to leave tomorrow. Because she's not getting the money that she expects from this plan. And Bob is going to leave the next day because he's not getting it. And so now, instead of growing our chapter to where it needs to be, we're concentrating on replacing Bob. And the next day, we're concentrating on replacing Lori. And the next day, we're concentrating on replacing Bruce. Our marketing plan says we've got to hold people accountable. Because all you're doing right now is creating this vicious circle. It's just a vicious circle. You're up 3, you're down 3. You're up 3, you're down 3. We have to turn around and then say, hey, by the way, we've got to have a membership drive because we need 6 people, or Ivan's going to get upset and shut down the chapter. Because we're way underneath where we need to be. It's a vicious circle. You've got to hold those people accountable. You've got to make sure that if you're inviting guests, so are they. And if they're not, then guess what? If they're not, then you have to hold them accountable, and you have to get them to sign off on the fact that they aren't willing to put their phone number in the Yellow Pages. Because if they're not willing to put their phone number in the Yellow Pages, chances are pretty good they're not going to be in business with you next time or this time next year. They're just not. So you might as well get rid of them now so that you can move forward. This is your marketing plan. It's a very, very set way on how to do it. All right? We know why we meet at 7 in the morning. We know why we do everything. That's what Jerry said earlier, which is we track everything. We have a rationale for doing absolutely everything that we do. Just like we have a rationale for putting we service all makes and models. Just like we have a rationale for putting our phone number in the Yellow Pages. Thanks.
Carl, don't turn the pilot light on.
I'll make sure I remember to do that. Part of the leadership training and part of today's